Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'du fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. By the grace and mercy of Allah Ta'ala, in these blessed days, we're fortunate and very blessed to be learning about the beautiful and blessed life of Syedna Imam al-Mahdi wal-Masih al-Maud Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani alayhi salatu wasalam. We had covered all the way till the year 1900, and today I intend to talk about the next 2 years, 1901 and 1902. I start today's lecture with the mention of Shahzada Abdul Latif Sahib Shaheed radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who was a prince in Afghanistan and a very big, mighty scholar. So much so that it is alleged that at one point he had more than 50,000 students. So, a very big name. And he belonged to the area of Khost in Afghanistan. He was a man who used to receive ilham and visions from Allah the Almighty as well. So, a proper buzurg in his own right. And some time back, Allah the Almighty had informed him that promised Messiah has been born in the province of Punjab. In the year 1894, when the Durand line was, which is the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan, when the border was being drawn, from the side of Afghanistan, the Amir of Afghanistan, who was, I believe, Amir Abdur Rahman at that time, had nominated 2 individuals. One was the governor of the province of Khost, and the other was Sajjad Abdul Latif Sahib Shaheed. So at that time he came to Peshawar, or the Sarhad area. And over the course of some time that he was there while the border was being drawn, he met an Ahmadi Muslim over there whose name was Sayyid Chand Badshah Sahib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who by way of just speaking to him spoke about Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam, and also gave him a copy of Aina Kamalat Islam, which Hazrat Sajjada Sahib studied and soon became Aqidatmand of Sayyidna Ahmad alayhi salatu wasalam. And then from time to time he would send some of his students from Afghanistan to come to Qadian and spend some time in the blessed company of Syedna Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, and then learn from him and then bring some of his literature back to Afghanistan, which Sajjada Sahib would read. So eventually in the year 1900, the December of 1900, Sajjada Sahib wrote his letter of bayah to Syedna Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salatu wasalam. And the person who brought this letter on behalf of him to Masih Maud alayhi salam to Qadian was Hazrat Maulvi Abdur Rahman Sahib radiyallahu ta'ala. So at this point, Hazrat Aqdas Masih Maud alayhi salam, in the beginning of 1901, end of 1900, beginning of 1901, Hazur gave this fatwa for the members of his Jamaat that from now onwards, do not offer prayers behind those who are our mukaffir, mukazzib, and mutaraddid. Which meant anyone who calls Ahmadis as kafir, do not pray behind them. Anyone who calls us liars, do not pray behind them. And anyone who is in a middle state, neither attests to the truthfulness of Masih Maud alayhi salam nor rejects him outright, even those people, they're called mutaraddid. Do not pray behind them. And there is wisdom and reasoning behind it. How did this all begin? So, Maulvi Muhammad Hussain Batalvi, in his famous fatwa takfir, which he had gathered, where he had gathered more than 200 or so ulamas, takfir against Masih Maud Islam, some of these fatwa included that now no one should be praying behind Ahmadis, and Ahmadis are murtad, they are wajibul qatl, na'uzubillah, that their nikah is now fasakh, meaning their marriages are invalid, and not just that, but nobody should be offering their namaz janaza as well. Their funeral prayers shouldn't be offered. So you can expect to what extent these Maulvis were going. And initially it was just a fatwa, but then people started acting on it. And things became very, very difficult for Ahmadi Muslims all across the land. And it was when things crossed limits, that's when Promised Messiah ﷺ penned an announcement and had it published. Hazrat Aqdas Masih Maud ﷺ stated, and I quote, याद रखो कि जैसा कि खुदा ने मुझे इत्तला दी है, तुम्हारे पर हराम है और कतई हराम है कि किसी मुकफ़िर और मुकज़्ज़िब या मुतरद्दिद के पीछे नमाज पढ़ो, बल्कि चाहिए कि तुम्हारा वही इमाम हो जो तुम में से हो। इसी की तरफ हदीस बुखारी के एक पहलू में इशारा है कि इमामुकुम मिनकुम, यानी जब मसीह नाजिल होगा तो तुम्हें दूसरे फ़िरक़ों को जो दावा इस्लाम करते हैं बकुल्ली तर्क करना पड़ेगा। तुम्हारा इमाम तुम में से होगा, बस तुम ऐसा ही करो। क्या तुम चाहते हो कि खुदा का इल्ज़ाम तुम्हारे सर पर हो और तुम्हारे अमल हबत हो जाएं और तुम्हें कुछ खबर ना हो? जो शख्स मुझे दिल से कबूल करता है वो दिल से इताअत भी करता है और हर एक हाल में मुझे हकम ठहराता है और हर एक तनाज़े का मुझसे फैसला चाहता है। मगर जो शख्स मुझे दिल से कबूल नहीं करता उसमें तुम नखवत और खुद पसंदी और खुद इख्तियारी पाओगे। बस जानो कि वो मुझसे नहीं है, क्योंकि वो मेरी बातों को जो मुझे खुदा से मिली हैं इज्जत से नहीं देखता, इसलिए आसमान पर उसकी इज्जत नहीं। इस इरशाद के कुछ अरसे बाद हजूर के एक मुरीद खान मोहम्मद अजब खान साहिब तहसीलदार ऑफ ज़ैदा ने हजूर से इस्तफसार किया कि जो लोग सिलसिला अहमदिया से नावाकिफ़ हैं उनके पीछे नमाज अदा की जा सकती है या नहीं। हजूर ने जवाब दिया, नावाकिफ़ इमाम से पूछ लो, अगर वो मुसद्दिक हो तो नमाज उसके पीछे पढ़ी जावे, वरना नहीं। अल्लाह ताला एक जमात अलग बनाना चाहता है, इसलिए उसके मंशा की क्यों मुखालफत की जावे? जिन लोगों से वो जुदा करना चाहता है बार बार उनमें घुसना, यही तो उसके मंशा के मुखालिफ है। हज़रत मसीह मौद अलैहिस्सलाम ने नमाज से मुतालिक इस हिदायत के साथ ही खबर दी कि सब्र करो और अपनी जमात के गैर के पीछे नमाज ना पढ़ो। बेहतरी और नेकी इसी में है और इसी में तुम्हारी नुसरत और फतह अजीम है और यही इस जमात की तरक्की का मूजिब है। देखो, दुनिया में रूठे हुए एक दूसरे से नाराज होने वाले भी अपने दुश्मन को 4 दिन मुंह नहीं लगाते और तुम्हारी नाराजगी और रूठना तो खुदा के लिए है, तो तुम उनमें अगर रले मिले रहे तो खुदा ताला जो खास नज़र तुम पर रखता है वो नहीं रखेगा। पाक जमात जब अलग हो तो फिर उसमें तरक्की होती है। चुनांचे सचमुच ऐसा ही हुआ। आपके इस फरमान की तामील करने वाले रोज़ अफजों तरक्की करते गए और करते जा रहे हैं। Promised Messiah ﷺ published this announcement that it is absolutely forbidden on the members of his Jamaat to pray behind non-Ahmadis. And Hazur said that Allah Ta'ala's Messenger ﷺ in a hadith which comes in Bukhari has clearly hinted, Imamukum minkum, that when the time of the Messiah of this Ummah will arrive, at that time you would have to leave all the other firqas of Islam and you would have to pray behind that Imam who is from among you. Imamukum, your Imam, minkum, from among you. So Ahmadis can only pray behind an Ahmadi Imam. So someone asked Hazur, what about an individual who doesn't, who hasn't made up his mind? Hazur said, someone who hasn't made up his mind, ask him. If they say that they believe in me, then pray behind them. If they say they don't believe in me, then don't pray behind them, because Allah Ta'ala is commanding you to not pray behind them. And he goes on to say that your tarakki, your success now is intertwined in this fatwa. Do not go and pray behind these non-Ahmadis. Some of us think that it's cool, it's okay to go and pray behind non-Ahmadi Muslims. Some of us have non-Ahmadi relatives, so when we visit our non-Ahmadi relatives, we think it's okay, kuch nahi hota. But look at what Allah Ta'ala told Promised Messiah ﷺ. अमाल हफ्त हो जाएंगे ऐसे बंदे के जो गैर अहमदियों के पीछे जाके नमाजें पढ़ता है. Their good deeds will go to waste by Allah the Almighty. Look, Allah is the owner, right? Of all of our actions, Allah is the master. He is the master of the day of judgment. If He doesn't like our actions, does He not have the right to discard all of them and say none of them is worthy of acceptance? So why are we then going against something which is a direct command of Allah the Almighty? Allah Ta'ala has blessed us that we, no matter what our number in the world is, whether it is small or large, it doesn't matter. What matters is we are told by Allah the Almighty through Promised Messiah Islam to not pray behind non-Ahmadis, no matter what the situation is. No matter what the situation is. So no matter how much you think it's okay or it's cool to go and pray behind non-Ahmadis, don't do it. Ultimately, it's not your gain, it's going to be your loss. They don't gain anything when you pray behind them. They could care less. But I'll tell you this, they will never pray behind you because they don't consider your Imam to be the Imam that Allah the Almighty has sent. So why go pray behind them? When somebody abuses your father and then says, okay, come pray behind me, would you pray behind them? If you're ba-ghairat, if you have some ghairat in you, if you have some dignity and honor in you, you will never pray behind such a man who abuses your father. What about that individual who is dearer to us more than our father because he is a prophet of God in this day and age? Imam Mahdi alayhi salatu wasalam. Somebody abuses him, calls him Dajjal, na'uzubillah, calls him a liar, and then you go praying behind him? By doing so, you will only demonstrate the fact that you have zero shame. You have no honor. That you are not ba-ghairat, but you are be-ghairat. So never make that mistake, no matter what happens. Someone said, Hazur, what about Jummah prayer? If I am at a place where there is no other Ahmadi, can I go pray behind non-Ahmadis? Or Hazur said, no need. Pray on your own. So even to that extent, Hazrat Aqdas Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam has guided us. Then in this year, 1901, this suggestion came up that in order to have Promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam's books and literature published in the West, a board needs to be there that would work on translating the writings of the Promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam in English language, and also perhaps there needs to be a monthly magazine that could be published from India and it could be sent to the European countries and the West, including America and whatnot. So a board of directors was appointed. The president of the board was Maulana Nuruddin Sahib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. The VP of this board was Maulvi Abdul Karim Sahib Sialkoti radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. The secretary of this board was Khwaja Kamaluddin Sahib, later went on to the Lahori Jamaat. And the assistant secretary of this board was Maulvi Muhammad Ali Sahib, also went to the Lahori Jamaat. Finance secretary Sahib was Sheikh Rahmatullah Sahib. Muhasib was Mian Tajuddin Sahib Lahori. It was suggested by this board that the name of this monthly magazine should be The Review of Religions. And its office and the place where this would be published should be Lahore, and that's what was decided. The patron, the main person behind all of this project ultimately was nonetheless Syedna Imam al-Mahdi, Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam himself. In the year prior, in 1900, in the month of December, Promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam had issued a challenge to Pir Mehr Ali Shah of Golda to basically write the tafsir of Surah Fatiha in Arabic language within 70 days of this announcement and have it published. Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam did it. So Promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam fulfilled this challenge, but Pir Mehr Ali Shah couldn't. So Hazrat Aqdas Masih Maud alayhi salam on the 23rd of February 1901 was able to, by this time he was able to write the tafsir of Surah Fatiha in Arabic language, in eloquent Arabic language, and then had it published. And he called it Ijazul Masih, the miracle of the Messiah. While he was writing this book, on the 15th of February 1901, there was a cricket match happening, which the Talimul Islam school's team was participating in. So one of the sons of the Promised Messiah Islam came to him and said, Abba, you're not going for the cricket match? So Promised Messiah Islam, for a brief moment, put his pen down, looked at his son and said, my dear son, the people will go play cricket and come back. But the cricket that I am playing will be remembered till the Day of Judgment. At that time, it was Ijazul Masih that Syedna Masih Maud was busy writing. When Masih Maud had written Ijazul Masih, Allah the Almighty revealed to him by way of revelation. It was an Arabic revelation. I'll quote the Urdu translation along with this English translation. जो शख्स इस किताब के जवाब पर आमादा हुआ वो अनकरीब देख लेगा कि वो नादिम होगा और हसरत के साथ उसका खात्मा होगा. Anyone who tries to raise their pen in order to write a response to Ijazul Masih will not be able to do so, will be embarrassed, and will die full of hasarat, will die without having this goal accomplished by them. So Promised Messiah Islam, on the very title cover of the book Ijazul Masih, printed this in bold letters. And then, of course, inside the book, he also mentioned it and then talked about this prophecy. He even said, दुनिया भर के उलमा सब इकट्ठे होकर भी अगर इस किताब का जवाब फसी अरबी में लिखना चाहें तो नहीं लिख सकते. That if all the scholars of the world, whether they be the Arab scholars or the non-Arab scholars, if they all get together and try to write a response to this book, which was Tafsir of Surah Fatiha in Arabic, he said they will not be able to do so. Look how powerful of a challenge it was. Since 1901, 124 years have gone by. 124 साल गुजर गए हैं. आज तक किसी माँ ने वो बच्चा नहीं जाना जो ऐसी तफसीर लिख सके सूरह फातिहा की, जो इस चैलेंज को रद्द कर सके, तोड़ सके. No mother has given birth to a son in these last 124 years who could write a tafsir of Surah Fatiha in Arabic language which could undo this challenge of the promised Messiah. So when Hazrat Aqdas Masih Maud had written Ijazul Masih, several months went by, and of course Pir Mehr Ali Shah couldn't do anything. The man was not a genius. This man wasn't capable of writing anything. He was just another person, and that's it. He was just born in a Gadi Nashin family, and that's it. Literally, that's it. This was his all accomplishment. So one of his students, Shagird, whose name was Maulvi Muhammad Hassan Sahib Faizi, from the Tahsil of Chakwal, he decided that he will write a response to Ijazul Masih. But instead of writing the tafsir of Surah Fatiha in Arabic language, which was the original challenge, he wrote something in Urdu. He wrote a book in Urdu, and in that book, he basically asserted that some of the statements of the promised Messiah ﷺ in Arabic language that he had, of course, written in the book, some of those sentences are found in some other books as well. Now, this is what you call a coincidence. If a book has, let's say, 10,000 sentences, and out of those 10,000 sentences, let's say 5 or 6 sentences happen to be by happenstance, by sheer happenstance, they are similar to some other book that might be out there. You don't say that this book is plagiarized, but yet this was the claim that this man was making, that in this book, XYZ number of sentences, they are similar to another book or some other book that was published, I don't know, centuries ago. So promised Messiah ﷺ has now Zubillah plagiarized. And he also made fun of some of the finer points that were revealed to promised Messiah ﷺ about the tafsir of Surah Fatiha by Allah the Almighty himself. So this man made fun of it. And also wrote in some places in his book, Lanatullahi al-Ghazibin, that may the curse of Allah be upon the liar, referring to Masih Maud as the one who was lying, God forbid. Look what happens. The man writes this book, within a week, Allah Ta'ala catches him. Within 1 week, Allah Ta'ala catches this man and this man dies. Within 1 week. Several months go by. Remember, the original challenge was within 70 days. At the same time, both parties should be able to do it, right? And Pir Mehr Ali Shah didn't do it. So several months go by, and by this time, Maulvi Hassan Faizi has also died. Pir Mehr Ali Shah writes a book, publishes it, sends a copy of it to the promised Messiah Islam. Promised Messiah Islam was thinking, okay, this man must have written the Arabic tafsir of Surah Fatiha. Hazur opens it, and it's in Urdu. Again, didn't answer the challenge of Masih Maud Islam altogether. There was no need for promised Messiah Islam to further engage with this man. The man had proven beyond a shadow of doubt that he has lost. He couldn't write tafsir. Instead, what he did, he copied the stuff from the book that Maulvi Muhammad Hassan Faizi had written. That's all he did. Eventually, one of the followers of Pir Mehr Ali Shah himself, who happened to be a friend of Maulvi Muhammad Hassan Sahib Faizi, his name was Mian Shahabuddin Saab. So Mian Shahabuddin Saab writes, he says that somebody came to his door asking where is the house of Maulvi Muhammad Hassan Faizi Saab. And he said, I guided him to the house, which wasn't too far. And I said, why, what's wrong? What is it? He said, Pir Mehr Ali Shah Sahib had borrowed some of the books of Maulvi Muhammad Hassan Faizi Saab, and I'm sent now to return it. He said, show me. So when he looked at the books that Pir Mehr Ali Shah had asked for, it was the writings of Maulvi Muhammad Hasan Faizi that he had written about Masih Maud Islam and Ijazul Masih. And when he cross-referenced those writings with Saife Chishtiyaai, the book written by Pir Mehr Ali Shah, it was copy of it, plagiarized. And remember, this man Mian Shahabuddin was a follower of Pir Mehr Ali Shah. So he's like, man, this guy, he stole Maulvi Muhammad Hasan Faizi's writings and he published it as his own. Maulvi Muhammad Hasan Faizi had died, so there was no way for him to come and defend himself. So he wrote to Mehr Ali Shah. He said, why did you do this? So in response, Mehr Ali Shah, what he did, he wrote a letter to Muhammad Hasan Faizi's father saying, don't show your son's books to Mian Shahabuddin. He is an enemy of ours. Subhanallah. He is an enemy of ours. Pir Mehr Ali Shah himself wrote a card, like a postcard, to another man, whose name, I believe, was Maulvi Karamuddin Sahib. And he wrote to him, he said that I have copied the writings of Maulvi Muhammad Hasan Faizi Sahib in my book Saife Chishtiyaai, and thereby Saife Chishtiyaai has become an amazing book. The man is literally, like, he's saying that yes, I did it. But then later on goes back on his word. So Saife Chishtiyaai was nothing but a work plagiarized from the work of Maulvi Muhammad Hasan Faizi, and it didn't deliver what the challenge was. The challenge was write tafsir of Surah Fatiha in Arabic language and do it within 70 days. After several months, this is what he comes up with in Urdu language and makes the exact same ghise bete etarazat that Maulvi Muhammad Hasan Faizi had did. So Pir Mehr Ali Shah lived up till 1937, and up until then, until his death, he was not able to write the response to Ijazul Masih. He wasn't able to write the tafsir of Surah Fatiha in Arabic, as was the challenge. Many people asked him, why aren't you doing it? Do it now, do it now, do it now. He said, oh, the thing is, Allah Ta'ala is blessing me so much with so much ma'arif, so much wonderful meanings of the Holy Quran that I cannot pen them. What an excuse of a person. Anyhow, 1901, another prophecy of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in regards to the advent of Imam Mahdi wal Masih Maud alayhi salam came true. There's a prophecy, Tujma'u lahu salah, that when Imam Mahdi Masih Maud will come, for him prayers will be combined. So when promised Messiah alayhi salam, from the end of 1900, the last couple months and until the first couple months of 1901, for about 4 or 5 months or so, promised Messiah alayhi salam was busy writing books. And I think within these 4 or 5 months, Hazur wrote 5 or 6 books. Within 4 or 5 months time frame. Imagine how much work it was. So during this time frame, the Zohar and Asr prayers were combined in one masjid, where promised Messiah ﷺ was offering prayers, which was most likely Masjid Mubarak. And the Imam of the prayer, of those prayers, were Maulvi Abdul Karim Sahib Sialkoti radiyallahu anhu. So one of the companions of the promised Messiah ﷺ raised this objection, saying that, we've been combining prayers, what will Non Ahmadis say? And eventually the matter, whoever the Sahabi was, presented this objection to Khalifatul Masih. He said, ask Masih Maud Islam yourself. I'm not getting in this. For me, whatever my Imam does, I follow. So eventually the matter was reported to promised Messiah Islam, and Hazur was not happy. Hazur said, when you have accepted me as Hakam and Adal, when you have accepted me as Imam Mahdi and the Messiah, when you have done my ba'ath, when you know that I'm from Allah Ta'ala and you've witnessed hundreds if not thousands of signs, then for you to raise this allegation doesn't make sense. He said, जब मुझे हकम अतल मान लिया तो फिर मेरी हर बात को कबूल करना चाहिए, मेरे हुक्म को, मेरे फैसले को आखिरी फैसला मानना चाहिए. When I have given my verdict on something, for you to then question it or go against it is sui adabi. Many people do the exact same thing when it comes to Syedna Khalifatul Masih ayyadahullah ta'ala bin Nasr al-Aziz. When Khalifatul Masih has decided upon something, if we have given our oath of allegiance to him, then that should be the end of it. We shouldn't be asking questions against Hazur, or why Hazur took a certain decision, or why he did what he did. If we have given our oath of allegiance to him, knowing that he is the Khalifa of Masih Maud alayhi salam, and Allah Ta'ala is the one who has appointed him to that office, उसके बाद एतराज करना गलत बात है. So promised Messiah ﷺ mentioned this prophecy, that this prophecy was fulfilled, and this prophecy had two elements. Number one, somebody else will be leading the prayers. So you know those non-Ahmadis who say, why did promised Messiah ﷺ not lead prayers? Even though promised Messiah did lead prayers many times. But they say, oh, oftentimes he would not lead prayers. There is the answer. Holy Prophet ﷺ's prophecy is there. Tujma'u lahu salah. For him prayers will be combined. If Imam Mahdi was to be the Imam of the Salat itself, surely Rasulullah ﷺ would have said, he will combine prayers. He didn't say he will combine prayers. He said, for him prayers will be combined, which means someone else will be leading the prayers. And of course, the second point in this hadith, the prophecy was that prayers will be combined. So for these 4 or 5 months, when Zohar Asr were combined because of the busy schedule of Syedna Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, this prophecy was fulfilled. November of 1901, Syedna Masih Maud wrote a book which is called Aik Ghalati ka izaalah, removal of a misconception. What ended up happening is that there was a Sahabi of Masih Maud in Amritsar. His name was Sheikh Ghulam Ahmad Sahib Faizi radiyallahu ta'ala. Some non-MD said to him that, you know, you've done the bai'at of a man who claims to be a prophet and messenger of God. And he said, no, Masih Maud has made no such claim. And this was wrong, because in the prophecies of Masih Maud he was called prophet. Dunya mein ek nazir aaya, par dunya ne usse kabool na kiya. That ilham was revealed another time, in which instead of saying dunya mein ek nazir aaya, Allah Ta'ala said dunya mein ek nabi aaya, par dunya ne usse kabool na kiya. Similarly, in many of his revelations, Allah the Almighty had called him Rasul. Up until 1900, 1901, promised Messiah Islam used to do ta'wil of it, saying that all it means is that I am similar to prophets of God. I am muhaddas. Muhaddas means someone who receives revelation but is not a prophet. But then in this time frame, in the year sometime 1900 and 1901, Allah Ta'ala corrected the stance of Masih Maud alayhi salam. So there is a correction of a stance, correction of the Aqidah. Hence, Promised Messiah ﷺ wrote this announcement, which was later published as a book known as Aik Ghalati ka izaalah. In this book, Syedna Masih Maud ﷺ stated, and I quote, खुदा ताला की वो पाक वही जो मेरे पर नाजिल होती है, उसमें ऐसे लफ्ज रसूल और मुरसल और नबी के मौजूद हैं, ना एक दफ़ा बल्कि सदहा दफ़ा, बल्कि इस वक्त तो पहले ज़माने की निस्बत भी बहुत तसरीह और तोज़ीह से ये अल्फाज मौजूद हैं, और बराहीन अहमदिया में भी जिसको तबाह हुए 22 बरस हुए, ये अल्फाज कुछ थोड़े नहीं. चुनांचे वो मुकालमात इलाहिया जो बराहीन अहमदिया में शाये हो चुके हैं, उनमें से एक ये वहीउल्लाह है, हुवल्लज़ी अरसला रसूलहु बिल-हुदा व दीनिल हक़्क़ि लियुज़हिरहु अला दीनि कुल्ली. फिर ये वहीउल्लाह है जो सफ़ा 557 बराहीन में दर्ज है, दुनिया में एक नज़ीर आया. उसकी दूसरी किरत ये है कि दुनिया में एक नबी आया. नबी के मानी लुगत की रूह से ये है कि खुदा की तरफ से इत्तला पाकर गैब की खबर देने वाला. बस जहां ये मानी सादक आएंगे, नबी का लफ्ज भी सादक आएगा. अगर खुदा ताला से गैब की खबरें पाने वाला नबी का नाम नहीं रखता, तो फिर बतलाओ किस नाम से उसको पुकारा जाए. अगर कहो उसका नाम मुहद्दस रखना चाहिए, तो मैं कहता हूं कि तहदीस के माने किसी लुगत की किताब में इजहार गैब नहीं है, मगर नबूवत के माने इजहार गैब है. और नबी एक लफ्ज है जो अरबी और इब्रानी में मुश्तरक है, यानी इब्रानी में इस लफ्ज को नाबी कहते हैं, और ये लफ्ज नाबा से मुश्तक है, जिसके ये मानी है खुदा से खबर पाकर पेशगोई करना. और नबी के लिए शारे होना जरूरी नहीं, शारे होना शर्त नहीं. शारे यानी शरीयत का लेकर आना शर्त नहीं. ये सिर्फ मुहब्बत है, यानी अल्लाह की तरफ से मिलती है, जिसके जरिए से उमूर गैबिया खुलते हैं. बस मैं जबकि इस मुद्दत तक 150 पेशगोई के करीब खुदा की तरफ से पाकर बचश्मे खुद देख चुका हूं कि साफ तौर पर पूरी हो गई, तो मैं अपनी निस्बत नबी या रसूल के नाम से क्यों कर इनकार कर सकता हूं. और जबकि खुद खुदा ताला ने ये नाम मेरे रखे हैं, तो मैं क्यों कर रद्द कर दूं या क्यों कर उसके सिवा किसी दूसरे से डरूं. और जिस जिस जगह मैंने नबूवत या रिसालत से इनकार किया है, सिर्फ इन मानों में किया है कि मैं मुस्तकिल तौर पर कोई शरीयत लाने वाला नहीं हूं, और ना मैं मुस्तकिल तौर पर नबी हूं, मगर इन मानों से कि मैंने अपने रसूल मुक्तदा से सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम बातनी फयूज हासिल करके और अपने लिए उसका नाम पाकर उसके वास्ते से खुदा की तरफ से इल्म गैब पाया है, रसूल और नबी हूं, बगैर किसी जदीद शरीयत के. इस तौर का नबी कहलाने से मैंने कभी इनकार नहीं किया, बल्कि इन्हीं मानों से खुदा ने मुझे नबी और रसूल करके पुकारा है. सो अब भी मैं इन मानों से नबी और रसूल होने से इनकार नहीं करता. और मेरा ये कौल कि मन नीस्तम रसूल व नया वर्दम किताब, कि मैं रसूल नहीं हूं और ना ही मैं कोई किताब लेकर आया हूं. इसके मानी सिर्फ इस कदर हैं कि मैं साहिब शरीयत नहीं हूँ। हाँ, ये बात भी याद रखनी चाहिए और हरगिज़ फरामोश नहीं करनी चाहिए कि मैं बावजूद नबी और रसूल के लफ्ज़ के साथ पुकारे जाने के खुदा की तरफ से इत्तला दिया गया हूँ कि ये तमाम फ्यूज़ बिला वास्ता मेरे पर नहीं है, बल्कि आसमान पर एक वजूद है जिसका रूहानी इफाजा मेरे शामिल हाल है, यानी मोहम्मद मुस्तफ़ा सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम। In this long passage that I have just presented before you, Syedna Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam has stated, in my revelation Allah has called me Rasul, Mursal and Nabi. Not one time but hundreds of times. So he says, anywhere where I have said that I am not a Nabi, all I am saying is that I am not a Nabi who is made a prophet of God independently, bringing a new Sharia. I have not brought any new Sharia and I am not made prophet independently. Rather, I am made prophet because of following Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, as it says in the Holy Quran, in Surah An-Nisa, verse number 70, for example, that whoever follows Allah and Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Allah Ta'ala from among them can raise someone to the office of prophethood as well. So this is what promised Messiah ﷺ basically presented. Up until this point, people used to hold the belief, and so did promised Messiah, for some time held the belief that a prophet is someone who is made prophet independently, and the fact that that they bring a Sharia or so. Here Allah Ta'ala corrected the stance, and now Prophet Messiah ﷺ is saying, I did not bring any Sharia, which was his stance since the very beginning, that he had not brought any new Sharia, and that he is not an independent Nabi. Other people thought that a Nabi can only be made independently. Promised Messiah corrected it. He said, I am not that type of Nabi. Everywhere where I have said that I am not a Nabi, I am referring to the type of Nabuwwat that you are thinking of. So this is what he mentioned in his book, Aik Ghalati ka izaalah. Now, when Khalifatul Masih, during the lifetime of Masih Maud al-Islam, the Sahaba held the same belief that Masih Maud al-Islam had. During the Khilafat of Khalifatul Masih Awwal radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Sahaba had the same belief. But then Khalifatul Masih Sani radiyallahu ta'ala anhu becomes the Khalifa, and a faction of Jamaat parts ways and starts the Lahori movement. And they changed the belief at this point. This Jamaat was also comprised of the Sahaba, and they changed the belief altogether. They said that no, Masih Maud al-Islam never claimed that he is a Nabi of Allah Ta'ala. The Ummati Nabi ka दावा नहीं किया, हालांकि Ummati Nabi के खुद ये लफ्ज़ हज़ूर ने इस्तेमाल किया. So Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu wrote a book which is called Hakikatun Nubuwa, the reality behind prophethood. So in this book, it's a long book which is found in second volume of Anwarul Ulum, and it's the final book in the second volume of Anwarul Ulum. In this, Hazur basically presented that there are three definitions or conditions for anyone to be a Nabi. When you read Quran, these are the three conditions. Number one, someone is called a Nabi. So if Allah Ta'ala is calling somebody a Nabi, that's number one. It's pretty clear. Number two, the word Nabi entails that someone with whom Allah Ta'ala is conversing a lot. Someone who receives 1 or 2 or 10 or 100 revelations over the course of their entire life doesn't make them a Nabi. Nabi is someone with whom Allah Ta'ala is conversing on almost daily basis, like how it was with Masih Maud al-Islam, and this entire series is a proof of that. I've quoted God knows how many examples, where for every little thing Allah Ta'ala was revealing to promise Messiah al-Islam, by way of revelation. So, kasrat mukalma mukhatba, a lot of revelation. And number three, ilmul ghaib, knowledge of the unseen, which means prophecies in which there will be glad tidings for some nations of the world if they accept the message of this person, and if they reject the message of this person, there will be news of their downfall, which is inzar. So tabshir and inzar is also found. Any individual in whom all these three things are found is a Nabi, is a prophet of God. After Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and all the way till Masih Maud al-Islam, no individual came in this ummah on whom all these three things could be combined. All these three things. The only individual who came in this ummah after Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is Syedna Ahmad ﷺ, on whom these three conditions were met. Hence, he is the Nabi. Those people who say, well, why did no other prophet come? Ask Allah Ta'ala why he did not send. It's up to Allah Ta'ala when he wants to send. Allah Ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, he knows when it is the best time to send a prophet in this world and whom to appoint as his prophet. So don't ask this question to us, ask Allah Ta'ala. The problem is, many of these people hold the belief that Allah Ta'ala now has gone mute and doesn't communicate anymore, doesn't answer anymore. In other words, they have come up with a lazy excuse that they do not want to ask Allah Ta'ala. He said, Allah Ta'ala doesn't communicate anymore, so there is no point asking Him. But those blessed souls from among them who pray to Allah Ta'ala still communicates with them and shows them the truthfulness of Masih Maud Islam. Hence, every single year, hundreds of thousands of people are entering this fold of Ahmadiyyat, the true Islam. Alhamdulillah. When this book was published, before this book was published, Maulana Abdul Karim Sahib Sialkoti Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu, one of the private secretaries of Promised Messiah Alayhi Salam and Imam in Masjid Mubarak, he used to address Masih Maud Alayhi Salam as Mujaddad, as the reformer, in his verbal communications, in his written communications to Huzur, and in his speeches and khutbah. But then comes this book, and then from this point onwards, he doesn't call Masih Maud Alayhi Salam Mujaddad. He calls him Nabiyullah, Mursal, and Rasul. This was the change in Sialkoti Saab's way of communication. Maulvi Fateh Muhammad Sahib Sial radiyallahu ta'ala, who was a young man, found out that izaalah is being published. Izaalah, Aik Ghalati is being published in the press. And he gets word of it, what's in it. He goes to the press while the book is being published, and he reads it there. And he says on Halaf, from that day onwards, I accepted Masih Maud Islam as a prophet of Allah. Another Sahabi. Maulana Nuruddin Sahib radiyallahu ta'ala, when he was a Khalifa, when he had become the Khalifa after the demise of Syedna Masih Maud Islam, somebody asked him in writing, how come he is the only one after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this ummah to have been called a Nabi? He said, Allah ne inhi ko Nabi kaha hai, to isliye wo Nabi hai. Meaning, he admitted that Allah has called Syedna Ahmad Islam a prophet, hence he is a prophet, and Allah did not call anyone else in the Ummah a prophet, hence nobody else in the Ummah became a Nabi after Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And this is exactly what Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself had said, Laysa bayni wa baynahu nabiyyun, that there is no prophet between me and that Messiah who will come in my Ummah. Hence there is no prophet in between these two. Maulvi Muhammad Ali Sahib, who became the leader of the Lahori faction. So from 1901 till 1908, until the demise of Masih Maud Islam, that's a good 7 years or so. And he was the editor-in-chief of Review of Religions. And several places, and I'm going to quote, give reference so that those who are watching this video afterwards, they can check this on their own as well. In several places, he himself wrote that promised Messiah ﷺ is a Nabi, a messenger of God. Later on, the man retracted. But during the lifetime of promised Messiah Islam, this is what he said. There is an incident where a large crowd was there. I think probably happened in Lahore or somewhere. And Mufti Muhammad Sadiq Sahib Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu and Maulvi Muhammad Ali Sahib, I think these two individuals were standing together and looking at the huge crowd. Looking at the huge crowd that had come out to see promised Messiah Islam. And Maulvi Muhammad Ali Sahib says, wow, what a large crowd. And Mufti Sahib goes, these people, why should they not come? Allah has sent His Prophet after such a long time. He made this statement in front of Maulvi Muhammad Ali Sahib, who later on said, no, promised Messiah had never claimed. If promised Messiah had never claimed, why did all these Sahaba held the same belief, including you? Meaning, including Maulvi Muhammad Ali Sahib. So, from Review of Religions, for example, this is just by way of example. Look at Review of Religions, Urdu, Volume 3, number 3. Volume 3, number 7. Volume 3, number 11. Volume 4, number 2. Volume 4, number 3. Volume 4, number 10. Volume 4, number 12. Volume 5, number 4. Volume 5, number 6. Volume 5, number 8. Volume 6, number 3. Volume 6, number 4. Volume 6, number 7. Volume 7, number 7. This is just by way of example. How many times in the Review of Religions that Maulvi Muhammad Ali Sahib himself was the editor. And either he himself wrote that promised Messiah ﷺ is a prophet of God, or it was written while he's the editor-in-chief and it was being published. There were letters written by promised Messiah that were published in English, or announcements, and it said, the prophet of Qadian, in Review of Religions. And it was published by Maulvi Muhammad Ali Sahib, who later on said that promised Messiah had never claimed. Remember 2 lectures ago, I spoke about a book called Tiryaqul Qulub. And I made all of you a witness when I said, remember this book? This is the book that Promised Messiah ﷺ had written. And other than one last page of it, the entire book was printed, published in the year 1899. One page was remaining. And then in the year 1902, Promised Messiah ﷺ added one more page, and then eventually the book was published. The entirety of the book, 99.99% of the book, was already written and in the press and processed in the press in the year 1899, right? So when we make this claim that in his writings post 1901, Promised Messiah ﷺ referred to him as a prophet of God, and not just as a muhaddis, not just as someone who is receiving revelation or just mujaddid, but an actual prophet of God, right? And we have several references from 1901 onwards, all the way till the very day that he died. He died on the, I think he passed away on 27th of May, one day prior, 26th of May. The last publication of Promised Messiah ﷺ was a letter which was published in the newspaper, 26th of May. Even in that, Hazur is claiming to be a prophet of God. All the way till his last breath, he's making this claim, right? So what do the Lahoris do? They say, no. After 1901, there was a book which was published. It's called Tiryaqul Qulub. And in Tiryaqul Qulub, Hazrat Masih Maud is saying that he's not a prophet of God. So this is where they cheat. Because Tiryaqul Qulub, in its entirety, other than the last page, was already published in the year 1899. And why it was published in 1902, I've already covered that 2 lectures ago. Anyone who hasn't listened to it, you can listen to it from there. So, every single reference supports us. Scholars in this day and age, such as Maulana Javed Ghamdi Sahab, so on and so forth, they claim that Promised Messiah ﷺ did not claim to be a prophet, but rather said that he is similar to prophets. Muhaddas, aks pada hai nabuwat ka unke upar. And that it was rather Muslim Maud Khalifat Masih Sani radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who later on exaggerated the claim of Syedna Ahmad ﷺ to that of a prophet. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. This proves to me that individuals like Ghamdi Sahab have actually not studied the books of Promised Messiah ﷺ. What they have probably read are the works of the Lahori Jamaat. And that's it. So, the research, so-called research done by so-called scholars is biased, to say the least, and lazy, very lazy. So this is the reality of the nabuwat of Syedna Masih Maud ﷺ. He claims that he is a subordinate prophet. He did not become a prophet independently. Rather, he became a prophet by following Rasulullah ﷺ. Hence, he is a ummati nabi. And that he did not bring any new sharia. Rather, he has come to fulfill the sharia, and meaning to act on it and spread the sharia of Muhammad Rasulullah ﷺ in this world. Then in 1902, the town plague started to have a strong foothold in Punjab and the rest of India. At this point, Syedna Masih Maud ﷺ wrote a book called Dafi'ul Bala, Removal of the Evil, right? Or removal of a trial, or whatever you want to call it. And in this book, Hazur stated, he said, ये ताउन मेरी मुखालफत के बाइस नमूदार हुई है, जो इस हालत में फर्व होगी अगर लोग खुदा के फरिस्तादे को कबूल कर लें, और कम से कम ये कि शरारत और ईज़ा और बदजुबानी से बात आ जाएं, नीज़ ये कि कादियान को अल्लाह ताला खौफनाक तबाही, ताउन की खौफनाक तबाही से महफूज रखेगा, क्योंकि ये उसके रसूल का तख्तागाह है और तमाम उम्मतों के लिए निशान है. In Dafi'ul Bala, Promised Messiah ﷺ stated that this plague has appeared in the land because he has been rejected by people. And the condition in which this plague will be removed as a punishment from God Almighty is if people accept him as a messenger or a prophet from God Almighty. Or at the very least, they need to desist from persecuting him and saying evil things and wrongful things about him. And then he says, Allah has told me that Taun will hit Qadian as well, but the severity of Taun hitting Qadian is not going to be that much. It will be very few cases. But everywhere around Qadian, it is going to be so severe that villages upon villages are going to be wiped out clean, which is exactly what happened. And the reason Qadian will be spared, overwhelmingly spared, comparatively speaking, is because a prophet of God is there, referring to himself. So, Taun hit the area, and even some of the neighbors whose walls were attached to the house of the promised Messiah Islam, even those neighbors died. But promised Messiah Islam and everyone in his household remained safe. I'll talk more about this in a bit. In this year, in Egypt, there was a scholar. His name was Muhammad Rasheed Raza. He basically wrote in one of the newspapers in Egypt that Ijazul Masih, the book Ijazul Masih, there's nothing crazy about it. He said, yes, I'll say that Arabic is good, but it has a hint of Ajamiyat in it, meaning that when you read it, you can tell that it's written by someone who's not an Arab. And the points mentioned in it, the tafsir mentioned in it, isn't even that crazy. And the only reason the person who has written this book is saying that this is a miraculous work is because now he has some following, and the following has basically, na'uzubillah, got into his head. So he made claims like this. Eventually, this was published in some newspaper in Egypt. The Muslims in India got hold of those newspapers, so they projected it all over the place. And then Masih Maud Islam then wrote a response. Hazur wrote a book, and Hazur called this book al-Huda wa tabsira liman yara. Hazur wrote it in Arabic, and Hazur said, well, if this book is not that crazy, why don't you write a response? Write the tafsir on the same conditions that I mentioned. You write the tafsir. I am told by Allah Ta'ala that if all the scholars from the Arab world and the non-Arab world were to get together, they would still not be able to write it. So if you think that there is nothing amazing about this book, write the response to it in Arabic. Arabic is your mother tongue. You're a scholar, go for it. Muhammad Rasheed Raza lived another 33 years, and he couldn't write a response. 5 years before he died, some MDs met him and said, you know, Promised Messiah wrote this book, Al-Huda wa tabsira liman yara, addressing you. And he challenged you. He said, okay, now write a response. So why don't you write a response and prove this prophecy of Mirza Sahib alayhi salam to be false? He couldn't write. He could not write. He wrote other books. He dared not write the response to Ijazul Masih. Khuda Ta'ala ne us bande ke kalam ko tod ke rakh diya. His pen was broken. खुदा ने उस बंदे के ज़हन को माफ कर दिया. उसके हाथ में से लिखने की ताकत खुदा ताला ने सलब कर ली. इधर उधर की चीजें लिखता रहा. इस चीज के ऊपर आके खुदा ताला ने उसकी ताकत को सलब कर लिया, क्योंकि ये खुदा कहार का वादा था कि जो लिखने का इरादा करेगा इजाजुल मसीह का रिस्पांस, खुदा ताला उसको नाकाम और नामुराद करेगा. और यही हुआ, आज तक होता आ रहा. Then Promised Messiah ﷺ wrote another book this year, which is called Nuzoolul Masih. The purpose of writing this book was Hazur wanted to basically summarize everything that he had mentioned up until now in his writings. So Nuzoolul Masih is like a summary of whatever Hazur had written up until this point. Hazur also mentioned 11 characteristics of a revelation that comes from God Almighty. How to know that a certain revelation is from Allah or not. So he wrote 11 characteristics of such revelations. And to prove that his revelations are indeed from Allah Ta'ala, he presented 123 prophecies in it that came true. 123 misalein di aapne. In this book, Hazur also publicly, openly, for the very first time, proved and showed to the world how Pir Mehr Ali Shah stole the work of Maulvi Muhammad Hasan Faizi and published it as his book Saife Chishtiyaai. In the year 1902, Hazrat Aqdas Masih Maud Islam laid the foundation of what we now have, the Nizam of Chadda, the system of financial sacrifice in our Jamaat, whereby Hazur stated that people should pay a certain amount, a certain percentage every single month. In 1902, Promised Messiah ﷺ wrote his book Kishti Nuh, Noah's Ark, And in this book, Promised Messiah ﷺ mentioned the prophecy that he had received from Allah Ta'ala, Inni uhafidhu kulla man fidar. Anyone who is in the household of Promised Messiah will not die of taun, will not die of bubonic plague. And as we said, the word ad-dar doesn't just refer to his household or his house made of brick and mortar. He said it also refers to my spiritual household, which is my Jamaat. So if you are, through your actions, in the eyes of Allah Ta'ala, truly a member of his Jamaat, through your actions, not just by a word of your mouth, through your actions, if you are indeed worthy to be called a member of his Jamaat, then Allah Ta'ala will protect you from bubonic plague, which was rampant everywhere in the country at that time. So, not a single mouse died of bubonic plague in the house of Masih Maud Islam. His neighbors, whose walls were attached to the household or to the house of Masih Maud Islam, they died. The Hindu neighbors died of taun. Not a single rat in the house of Masih Maud Islam died of taun. And what happened to Jamaat, the spiritual Addar? Up until the year 1901, the membership of the Jamaat was in few thousand. The year 1902, when there is a J curve in the rise of cases of bubonic plague, in 1902 alone, the membership of Jamaat reached 100,000. From few thousands to 100,000 in just 1902 alone. In 1903, the number increased so much, the number of bats that were coming in, that up until this point frame in time, Al-Hakam, the newspaper Al-Hakam, was publishing the names of new converts. That today these many people, XYZ their name, this is from their, from XYZ area, they are writing and giving their oath of allegiance to Masih Islam. So they were publishing names, lists. And they were now coming in so great numbers that they stopped. They're like, yeah, we can't manage this. So they stopped printing these lists altogether. Then 1904, the number doubled. By 1904, the membership of the Jamaat had reached 200,000. By the year 1906, this number doubled up again, and the number of Jamaat's Tajneed was 400,000 people who were claiming that they are members of Jamaat-e-Ahmadiyya Muslimah in Islam. Something remarkable happened in the month of May 1904, when plague was at its peak, when taun was at its peak. In the household of Masih Maud Islam, Maulvi Muhammad Ali Sahib became sick. And he had fever, and apparently the symptoms of bubonic plague were there. So he's like, man, did I just catch bubonic plague? And Promised Messiah had said, anyone who's true in their faith will not be affected by bubonic plague. And Maulvi Muhammad Ali Sahib got something. So he's scared. Promised Messiah comes, and he is informed that Maulvi Muhammad Ali Sahib thinks that he's contracted bubonic plague while he was in the household of Masih Maud Islam. So Masih Maud Islam says, अगर आपको मेरे घर में अगर ताउन हो गया है, तो मेरे सारे इलामात झूठे. I cannot be from Allah Ta'ala if in my household you have become affected by bubonic plague. कहाँ है ताउन? Hazur puts his hand on the forehead of Maulvi Muhammad Ali Sahib, who before this point was burning with fever. And when the moment Hazur touched, there was no fever. Whatever symptoms that were there, everything vanished. This is Masih. कहते हैं ना, मसीह ने मुर्दों को चंगा कर दिया, बीमारों को चंगा कर दिया. ये है मिसाल जमात अंबिया के अंदर मसीह मौद अलैहिस्सलाम के जरिए से जिंदगी पाने वालों. Then Promised Messiah ﷺ also wrote a book called Tuhfatun Nadwa, in which basically Hazur mentioned, somebody raised this allegation that there are many people who claim to be false prophets or falsely claim to be prophets, and they lived more than 23 years. According to Surah Al-Haqqa, there is a verse in Surah Al-Haqqa which says, that anyone who makes a false claim that they are from Allah Ta'ala while in reality they're not, right? Allah Ta'ala will punish that individual and destroy that individual. Allah Ta'ala revealed this verse as a response to the Quraysh, the Arabs who were saying that Nauzubillah Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is lying. And Allah said, if Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was lying, I would have destroyed him. Right? So anyone who lies on Allah Ta'ala punishes such a person. So, based on this verse of the Holy Quran, the scholars of the past, centuries before Masih Maud Islam, they were of the opinion that a true claimant will receive 23 years, at least 23 years, which is the lifespan of Holy Prophet ﷺ when he made the claim that he's a prophet of Allah Ta'ala. So 23 years. A false claimant will get killed within this time frame. So there were now scholars who were saying, well, Mirza Sahib, you've been claiming to be from Allah Ta'ala, and you've been claiming to be a Mamur min Allah for more than such a long time, right? So Promised Messiah was presenting this as a proof that he's from Allah Ta'ala, and other scholars were now saying that no, this condition does not apply because this condition doesn't even exist. There were people who claimed to be false Anbiya, and they lived more than 23 years. So Promised Messiah ﷺ then wrote this book in response to that claim of theirs and proved them wrong. Then in 1902, Akhbar al-Badr from Qadian began as well. In 1902, the second son of the Promised Messiah ﷺ from Hazrat Amajan, Sahibzada Mirza Bashir Ahmad Sahib, had his nikah done. And the month later, in September 1902, Mian Bashir Ahmad Sahib's nikah happens, and then in the month of October, his older brother, Syedna Muslim Maud's nikah happens. So there is some guidance for those people जो अपने बच्चों की शादियां तरतीब में करना चाहते हैं. वो कहते हैं जब तक बड़े की शादी नहीं होगी, छोटे की शादी नहीं हो सकती. ये उनके अपने ज़हन के मफरूज़ात हैं. मसीह मौद अलैहिस्सलाम के घर में क्या हुआ? छोटे लड़के के लिए पहले रिश्ता आ गया, उनका रिश्ता पहले कर दिया. बड़े लड़के का अगले महीने आया, उसका अगले महीने कर दिया. बहुत से बेचारे नौजवान ऐसे हैं, लड़के भी और लड़कियां भी, जो शादी करना चाहते हैं लेकिन नहीं कर पाते क्योंकि उनका जो बड़ा भाई है या बड़ी बहन है उसकी शादी नहीं हो पा रही. मैं ज़ाती तौर पे कम से कम 2-3 ऐसे केसेस को जानता हूँ. एक नौजवान लड़का मेरे पास आया, आज से 10 साल पहले की बात है, कि मैं शादी करना चाहता हूँ, मेरे इर्द गिर्द लड़के लड़कियाँ हैं, उनकी आपस में दोस्तियाँ हैं, मेरे वालिद नहीं मानते. मैंने बड़े प्यार से समझाने की कोशिश की, खुतबे के अंदर भी नाम लिए बगैर. उसके वालिद नहीं माने कि नहीं, इसकी बड़ी बहन है, जब तक बड़ी बहन की शादी नहीं होगी मैं इसकी शादी नहीं करूँगा. 10 साल पहले की बात थी, उस लड़के की आज तक शादी नहीं हुई. एक और लड़का था और उसके बारे में मैं जानता था कि उसकी एज हो गई है, शादी करना चाहता है. उसके माँ बाप भी कहते थे कि नहीं, शादी तब तक नहीं करेंगे. वो बड़ा था. अब वो बड़ा था, उसकी इसलिए नहीं करेंगे कि पहले बहनों की शादियां करें. एक केस में लड़का छोटा था, बड़ी बहन थी, तो बड़ी बहन की वजह से इसकी शादी नहीं थी. और दूसरे केस में ये बड़ा था, लड़का बड़ा था और बहनें छोटी थी, तो कहते थे नहीं, पहले छोटी बहनों की शादी होगी फिर इसकी करेंगे. वो उस बेचारे के भी अच्छा खासा उसके वालिदैन ने रगड़ा लगाया. तो ये चीज़ें ठीक नहीं है. अपनी औलाद को इम्तिहान में मत डालें. जब आपके बच्चे कहें कि वो शादी के लिए तैयार हैं, उनकी बात मान लें और शादी कर दें, इससे पहले कि खुदा न खास्ता वो कोई ऐसा कदम उठाएं जिसके बाद फिर आप सारी जिंदगी किसी को मुंह दिखाने के काबिल ना रहें. और ये हो रहा है. At the end, so Hazur in this year also traveled to Batala, also wrote a response or his review on a debate that took place between Ahle Hadith and Ahle Quran. Ahle Hadith were represented by Maulvi Muhammad Hussain Batalvi. Ahle Quran were represented by Chakradalvi Sahab, Abdullah Chakradalvi. So Ahle Quran, Abdullah Chakradalvi, whom he was representing, they believe that only Quran is there is no Hadith. They reject Hadith outright. Ahle Hadith, they accept Quran, but they accept Hadith as superior authority on Quran. They say Hadith can abrogate verses of the Quran. So Promised Messiah ﷺ wrote his review and proved how both sides were wrong. Both sides were opting to different extremes, and Promised Messiah presented the right stance, which is Quran is supreme, and then is Sunnah, and then is Sunnah is the physical actions of Rasulullah, and then is Hadith, which is the verbal statements that were recorded 100 or so plus years after the demise of Rasulullah. And he said, Hadith or Sunnah cannot contradict Quran. It is Quran which is supreme. So Hazur wrote this book and published it in 1902. In 1902, at the end, Alexander Dowie officially entered the ring, and Promised Messiah ﷺ called him out because this man was calling Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam very bad things. In his paper Leaves of Healing, which he was publishing from not too far from here, 6 hours drive perhaps. If you were to travel 6 hours west, you'll hit Zion, Illinois, which was the seat of Alexander Dowie. The city was established by him, and I have served as an Ahmadi Muslim Imam in that city 10 years ago. So at his peak, the city was housed by thousands of people that were followers of Alexander Dowie, and the entire city was personal property of Alexander Dowie. Imagine the worth of that man in that day and age. Safir of China came and met him over there. And then he enters the ring against Masih Maud Islam and gets shattered, destroyed. Promised Messiah called him to a prayer duel, Mubahila, and in 1902, this is happening. The man was in his 50s and Promised Messiah was touching 70. So Hazrat Aqtas Masih Maud calls him to prayer duel, and then, so this is end of 1902. 1905, 3 years later, while in a public gathering, Dowie wanted to deliver a speech in front of a packed stadium, packed crowd, and he is hit with paralysis right there and then. Within 2 years, he died a miserable death. Every single thing he had went away. His people left him. He was ousted as a drunkard. He used to say, don't drink. And as a way of God's sign, he was ousted as a drunkard. He at one point said, there is no need for any hospital to be built in Zion. I will cure people. Today, one of the biggest cancer hospital in the country is built in front of that same house where he lived. खुदा का निशान देखे कितना बड़ा। हम उस मुल्क में रह रहे हैं जिस मुल्क में खुदा ताला ने मसीह मौद इस्लाम की सदाकत का इतना बड़ा निशान दिखाया। वो दर हकीकत मसीह मौद इस्लाम की सदाकत नहीं, बल्कि इस्लाम की सदाकत है, मोहम्मद रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की सदाकत है। When Alexander Dowie died, more than 150 or so different newspapers of the world in many different countries published it. There is a book which has been published by Jamaat-e-Ahmadiyya, it's sitting in my office. It has captured 160 or so such publications, clippings of those newspapers from all over the place, from all these different countries, published in that time, that spoke about great is Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, the Messiah, and how Alexander Dowie lost. This is where the year 1902 ends. Inshallah ta'ala, tomorrow I'll cover the subsequent years. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Muhammadur Rasulullah.